So today I want to talk a bit about my Muharram short film, a bit about the behind the scenes, the full process that went into making it. I've had this project on my mind for many years now. I've always wanted to find a way to blend my two passions, one being cinematography and the other being poetry. I've always wanted to create projects that are not very overt and give this impact on the viewer where it moves them in a way they can't explain. I wanted to tackle the themes of longing and loss. And I wanted to not only tackle these themes head on, but also do so in such a way where it connects to Imam Hussein and the story of Ashura, meaning that whenever you go through something very difficult in life, you can always connect it to Imam Hussein and use it as a catalyst to strengthen your relationship to Imam Hussein. In order to try and communicate these themes visually, I focused a lot on the idea of death. Death is a very practical and powerful metaphor for loss, because once you die or once you lose someone to death, there is no comeback from that. The question I've always asked myself is, what is the proper way to love? How does one properly love? How did you get to a point where your heart is soft enough that you can love from a very true place and not from a place of longing, yearning and chasing? This is why I also wrote scenes on heartbreak and domestic violence, because I feel that these are very two practical ways of showing us how something as strong as love can hurt you. Either hurt you as the victim, or God forbid you get to a point where because you're not comfortable with love, it becomes anger and you use it to hurt other people. When it comes to some of the visuals in the film, I want to focus on a coffin and myself being there beside that coffin, insinuating the idea that inside the coffin is myself and I'm approaching my dead self while alive. And the question I ask myself in that situation is, what is the person I want to become when I do eventually die? Which is why in those scenes I'm wearing a black thobe and a scarf and holding a poem and going over the poem to recite, because in my mind, while of course I have sins and of course I have faults, the purest version of myself I consider to be would be the person who gets up there and recites poetry for the Ahlul Bayt. When it comes to the main and to me the most striking visual from the poem, this image actually came to me many years ago. The image of Imam Hussein himself sitting on the pulpit looking at this crowd of mourners who love him so much. And he's not only watching them mourn him, but he sees their pain, he sees their suffering, he sees what they're going through in life, he sees what they yearn in life. And I think what's so powerful about that image is that no one has suffered like the Imam, and no one has felt pain like the Imam has felt pain. A kind of bitter look that tells you that I've seen pain as well, you've seen pain, and I understand what you're going through, but your pain will never reach my pain. Given that this short film was made on a zero budget, I knew that everything I wrote had to be very practical so that I can shoot it myself. For this shot of the man in the car on his phone, the first thing I tried to figure out was where the street light was, which was to the right of the screen. So what I did was I put my Amran 200D on a light stand and shone it down to the car at an angle. I also put a small LED bar between the sun shield and the roof of the car, and this basically lit up the subject's face. And the last thing I did was I got a very small light and put it on the boot of the car, which is shining up at the trees above the car, and that gives a very nice glimmer on the leaves behind him. When it comes to this very powerful scene, this was actually filmed during my trip to London, and I live in Detroit, so I had to find a way where I could transport lights with me, but do so in a very smart way that I didn't have to overpack or bring a ton of lighting gear with me. So what I did was I brought two Amran, and I basically brought a clamp which I put on the door, which you can see on the left of the screen, and I clamped the light onto that door and I shone the light to the ceiling, and that light bounced off the ceiling and down to the subject's faces, giving them a very soft light on their skin. And then I got my other Amran 100D and I shone it through the curtain, which kind of gives the impression of moonlight. For this shot here, we had to film in the basement of the house. I positioned them by the only window in the basement, and I basically shone an Amran 200D through the basement, and you can see the rays of light shining in through there and onto the head of the woman. When it comes to this image of Imam Hussein sitting on the pulpit, I got my 48-inch parabolic softbox and I put my GVM 300D on there, and I basically positioned it on the right of the frame, and I got that light to shine on the sides of their faces. I also got a massive black cloth and put it on a C-stand on the left side of the screen, and what that did was put some contrast on the left side of their faces, making it feel a bit more cinematic. There are also a few soft light panels on the ceiling which are pointed at the pulpit, and this lit up the Imam. The main reason I made the short film was because I wanted it to be something that acknowledges the pain that we all go through deep down, that perhaps we can't talk about or know how to talk about, while at the same time giving us real hope and purpose, being that it connects to something greater than ourselves, here specifically being that love of Imam Hussein. If you haven't seen the short film, you can watch it either on my YouTube channel or on my Instagram feed. And if you have seen the short film, you can support this project by sharing it as far and wide as possible.